We've all heard the kinds of stories that make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. But the most chilling tales are not always from movies or books. They're real. The following 5 true crime horror cases go beyond the ordinary, blurring the lines between reality and nightmares. These stories will have you questioning the very nature of humanity, and maybe even checking your locks before you go to bed tonight. You've heard the stories, and now the shadows are closing in. But there's one way to stay safe. They say tapping that like button just might keep the darkness at bay. Go ahead, hit it before it's too late. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to Evidence Talks for more eerie stories to keep you on edge. Twin sisters often share an unbreakable bond, but for June and Jennifer Gibbons, this connection took a darker turn. Born in Wales in the 1960s, June and Jennifer were inseparable, yet they were also unique in one unsettling way. They refused to speak to anyone but each other. This eerie silence earned them the nickname, the Silent Twins. As young girls, June and Jennifer quickly became known for their reclusive behavior. They only communicated with one another in a private language and shut themselves off from the world. As they grew older, this isolation intensified. They began writing disturbing fiction that reflected the depth of their troubled thoughts. Eventually, their bond spiraled into something far more destructive. By their teenage years, the twins had withdrawn completely from society. Their only form of expression became increasingly violent stories that hinted at their inner turmoil. Their behavior grew more unpredictable, leading them to commit acts of vandalism and even set fires. This would eventually lead to their arrest and internment at Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility known for housing some of the most dangerous individuals in the country. But the most haunting part of their story came after years of treatment at Broadmoor. Shortly after their release in 1993, Jennifer suddenly passed away under mysterious circumstances. June later revealed that Jennifer had made a chilling confession. She was going to die so that June could live a normal life. Despite medical investigations, the exact cause of Jennifer's passing remains unknown to this day. Was it a sudden medical condition, a psychological phenomenon, or something even more mysterious? What do you think? June now lives a quiet life, but the story of the Silent Twins still lingers, raising disturbing questions about their bond, the nature of isolation, and the dark power that their shared silence seemed to hold. Sometimes, the most terrifying individuals are those who hide behind a mask of normalcy. David Parker Ray, a man from New Mexico, lived in an unassuming desert town, but behind closed doors, he created a space that has haunted investigators and survivors alike. Known as the Toy Box Killer, Ray's crimes took place inside a specially outfitted trailer he chillingly referred to as his toy box. Ray's trailer was no ordinary vehicle. Inside, authorities uncovered a chilling array of devices and tools, carefully designed to bring fear and suffering to those trapped inside. For years, Ray is believed to have abducted women, holding them captive and subjecting them to unspeakable torment. His methods were meticulously planned, and he left behind disturbing notes and recordings of his actions, giving chilling insight into his twisted mind. Ray's reign of terror came to an end in 1999 when one of his captives, Cynthia Vigil, made a daring escape. Despite being restrained, she managed to flee Ray's trailer and alert nearby residents, leading to the arrest of Ray and his accomplices. Cynthia's bravery ultimately uncovered years of horror, but tragically, despite mountains of evidence, very few victims were ever identified. Ray had carefully concealed much of his crimes, leaving families to wonder about the fate of their loved ones. Ray never fully answered for his crimes, as he passed away in prison in 2002. To this day, the exact number of lives he affected remains unknown. The true horror of his toy box lives on in the nightmares of those who study the case. A reminder that sometimes the greatest evil can hide in plain sight. There are crimes so heart-wrenching, so deeply disturbing, that they leave an imprint on an entire society. The tragedy of Junko Furuta, a 17-year-old girl from Tokyo, is one such case, one that continues to horrify those who open their ears and listen. Junko Furuta was a bright and optimistic high school student, but in 1988, she fell victim to a group of 4 young men who abducted her. What followed over the next 44 days was a horrifying ordeal that took place in a seemingly normal neighborhood. Inside one of the suspects' homes, Junko was held captive and subjected to unimaginable suffering, while the families of her captors turned a blind eye to the horrors unfolding under their own roof. Despite multiple opportunities for intervention, Junko's suffering continued until her untimely death. Her captors attempted to conceal their crimes by hiding her remains, but they were eventually caught and brought to trial. However, the light sentences they received shocked the nation and led to widespread outrage. None of the men involved faced life in prison, and many were released after only a few years behind bars. Junko's case has left a deep scar on Japan, symbolizing not only the unimaginable cruelty of her captors, but also the failure of justice to adequately punish those responsible. Her story serves as a reminder of the fragility of human empathy, and it continues to haunt those who remember her name. In 1912, the quiet town of Vilisca, Iowa, was rocked by an unspeakable crime. In the early hours of June 10th, 8 people, 6 members of the Moore family and 2 young guests, were found brutally killed in their own home. The crime, which became known as the Vilisca Axe Murders, remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history. On that fateful night, the entire household had been struck down as they slept, with an axe left behind at the scene. The killer moved methodically through the home, leaving behind a gruesome sight. Despite the brutal nature of the crime, no clear motive ever emerged, and the case baffled investigators for decades. Over the years, several suspects were brought in, including a traveling preacher who had been in town the day of the murders and a known serial offender. However, none were ever convicted, and the mystery remains unsolved to this day. The Moore house still stands, preserved as it was on the night of the crime, and some claim that paranormal activity has been witnessed there. With no clear answers and the eerie preservation of the crime scene, the Vilisca Axe Murders continue to captivate true crime enthusiasts, leaving behind a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Some crimes are so deeply unsettling, they seem to touch on something beyond the physical world. The murder of Arliss Perry, a 19-year-old newlywed, has haunted the quiet halls of Stanford Memorial Church for decades. What began as a simple visit to a place of worship in 1974 quickly turned into a mystery that has baffled investigators for years. Arliss was found within the church under deeply disturbing circumstances. Her body had been arranged in a way that led investigators to suspect something far more sinister than a random crime. The eerie nature of the scene fueled rumors of cult activity and ritualistic motives. For over 4 decades, the case remained unsolved, with many speculating about links to notorious figures, including the son of Sam, who hinted at involvement years later. But it wasn't until 2018 that new evidence led police to a former security guard who had been working at Stanford the night Arliss was last seen alive. Stephen Blake Crawford, who had long been a person of interest, ended his own life before police could take him into custody, leaving the final details of the case forever shrouded in mystery. Though the case is now officially closed, questions still remain. Was Crawford acting alone, or was there something darker at play? The haunting nature of the crime and the unanswered questions it leaves behind continue to make Arliss Perry's case one of the most unsettling in modern American history. These 5 stories remind us that the line between good and evil is thinner than we'd like to think. From unsolved mysteries to unsettling crimes, they leave us with more questions than answers. What do you think? Which case haunted you the most? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to Evidence Talks for more true crime stories that'll keep you on edge. Take care, and don't forget, I'm always watching.